what you've done before. Either way, everybody's always invited out to these, and we're going to see if we can explain a little bit about who we are and what it is that we do. But more than anything, we just want to train. That's what we specialize in, and so that's what we're going to spend the majority of time doing. But let's go through a couple of basic introductions here.
Hey, Shade, I was just able to log in. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. In fact, yes, everyone, that is Skylar Fishback. My name is Shade Ferre. We'll be the individuals conducting the training tonight. Normally, we wouldn't have, normally we wouldn't be rushing this far. These are the slides that would be up there, as we're calmly getting things ready to go there and launched. But if you do have audio difficulties at this point, it seems like it's just you and everybody else is doing okay, try disconnecting and reconnecting, because a lot of times that'll fix the issue. There are a couple of our mug shots here. I guess we should give some background and explain, who we are. I started off with tax liens and deeds with my cousin, current business partner. He's somebody that Skylar and I work with here all the time. His name's Steve. I started working with tax liens and deeds with him a number of years back, about 11 to 12 years ago. At the time, he was working as a real estate agent, and he had another realtor that kind of approached him with the idea of tax liens, and he brought the idea to me, and we were cousins, and we were pretty young at the time. But it was an idea that was fascinating to us, and so in a lot of ways, I think that we started off in the same place that everybody else does. We bought a lot of programs, and we read books, and we went through so much material, and eventually we started attending auctions, and that was really what made the difference for us. And in what we learned over the course of a few years, we ended up creating a training in 2007, and what we've been doing ever since then is providing that training directly to these big seminar companies. So we've essentially been doing that the entire time we've been in business, and there are a few things that we wanted to change. Number one was we wanted to be able to work directly with people, and we didn't want the training. Well, I don't want to beat around the bush. If you're on the webinar right now, chances are you probably spent money on training before. If you haven't, then you're one of the lucky. A lot of people have spent money on big money on training, and for us, it's not like, I guess for us the teaching side of it's important, and it's important that people are happy with the service, and they're also out there being successful with it. And we decided that we could do that easier just going directly out to people. So that's sort of what we do now. Just over the last few months is what we've changed. But we'll tell you a couple of things right up front, and that is that we're teachers first and foremost. We do this every day. We teach it every day. We have a lot of students we work with right now, and over the years we've worked with thousands. So this is something that we're really dedicated to on a daily basis, and we're passionate about it. But we're not sales guys, so we're not very good with the sales side of it here. In fact, we really do kind of mess it up in a lot of ways here. The idea is simple, though. We've been working directly with seminar companies for so long, and by now being able to kind of cut out that middleman, we can offer the same training that would normally cost thousands. We can offer it to people for a flat fee, $500. And we're going to give you a link. We honestly didn't really want to spend too much time talking about the training, because I think the more we try to sell something, I think that, like I said, we're not sales guys. So we're just going to give you a link. You can take a look at what the offer is, and if it's something that makes sense, then certainly if you're interested in tax liens and deeds, then the one thing we do know is that there's a ton of value in this, because it's the same training that we've been offering people for a long time, but the price is just about a quarter of what it normally is.
Well, and also, Shade, let's make sure that we mention here that we love questions. And so come the end of the presentation here today, after we get done teaching you, about tax liens, tax deeds, what's possible with them, a little bit more about the enforcement systems, we definitely want you guys to ask questions. That's what we do. We love to answer questions. So as you're going throughout today's presentation, anytime you guys have questions, type them into the box or the chat box on the right-hand side, We might take a break for questions contingent upon time, the pace of the conversation. But again, make sure that you write those questions down, and at the end we will definitely open it up for questions.
Okay, and you know what else I want to do here is I just want to make sure, would you guys just do me a favor? We haven't had a lot of responses here. I just want to make sure that our audio quality is okay. So if I could just get some more of you just to go out of the chat section and just let me know that you can hear me okay. Because, oh, there we go, excellent. If I could get just a couple more so I know that we've got it working here. Oh, by the way, there's a chat section and there's a Q&A section. Oh, thank you guys. Thank you so much. If you're new to the webinar, you know, the chat section is typically the easiest place for us to see the questions because we don't have to. Hello, Mike. We don't have to change the screen in order to see your question. So, chat section is usually the best place. So, excellent. Well, welcome out tonight. I'll tell you what. There are a couple things that we wanted to focus on primarily with this training, and really. Online tax foreclosures is the primary subject, but there are a couple things that we wanted to cover because really they relate to all investors, I think, in one way or another. I think you kind of have to understand how the general systems work in order to understand one of them specifically. It would be kind of like understanding, you need to understand how a car worked in general before you would, before you could really understand the specific model, and that's kind of the way it is with the training. You need to understand tax liens, tax deeds, just the property tax system in general pretty well, and then everything else makes perfect sense. So the first fact here is tax liens earn interest rate returns ranging from 12 to 24%. That is, I mean, that's just what it is. It is what it is. And it may sound pretty incredible, but I'll see if I can explain it later in a way here that will make sense and in a way that will make you say, okay, I understand that now and how that works, and it won't seem quite so mysterious. If you still have a question about tax liens, you may still have a lot of questions about a lot of this because there are so many different terms that are used, and we use terms almost interchangeably, and there's obviously a difference between how things work. So we'll see if we can clarify what some of those differences are and help everyone identify what we're talking about. And let's see here. And Kathy, if you are one of our lifetime members, then you are a lucky person. Basically, really, that you wouldn't have to worry about anything there. In fact, if you want to look at any training, you can always contact us here. But you are set up and pretty good to go. That was a pretty good setup. So we're just happy to have you. And it's like I said, it's basically the same thing that you have as well. So
hey, Shade, if you get any of our lifetime members that have any specific questions, will you just have them email us? In fact, I'll try to type it into the chat box. Just shoot us an email at support@propertytaxlist.com.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Skylar. Appreciate that very much.
You bet.
Okay. In fact, I'll have that address written right here for you. Okay, there we go. All right, so another fact here, taxable investing can now be 100% online. This is a pretty exciting aspect of the investment, and it's something that didn't exist even 10 years ago. I mean, when I started with tax liens and tax deeds, it was completely different. It required travel in almost every case, and the reason why was because if you wanted to do research on a property, your source for information was going to be county records. Well, where would you go to source out county records? And that answer is a county records building. That was prior to the internet, when you couldn't just go to the internet to get your answers. So what's happened with the internet in every aspect of our lives is obviously amazing. But with tax sale investing specifically, what we're looking at now are investment strategies that didn't exist just a few years ago. Literally, we can do the same thing now in just a couple minutes that would have required days of travel just a few years back. So it's pretty neat stuff. It's a brand new investment in more ways than one. Here's another fact, and that is tax liens are just one of three what we call property tax enforcement systems that are used throughout the U.S. Okay, so we call these property tax enforcement systems. Tax liens, again, are just one of three. The other, you see listed here, we have tax deeds and then something called redemption deeds. Now, tax deeds, another term for tax deeds would be tax foreclosures. So that is, another type or another system right there. And then we'll talk and explain what these redemption deeds are. Now, I also wanted to stress something important here that will help. I think it will help everything make a little bit more sense, and that is if you understand the way that our state laws and some of the federal laws work. Federal laws control things like our taxation of personal income, things like that. That's what the IRS works off of. When we pay property taxes, though, that's actually a state tax. Now we pay it to our county, but it's a right that's given to the county through the state laws. So what's important to know here is that every state has its own set of very specific laws about how property taxes are issued, how they're collected, how they're enforced. And so if you can imagine, you have 50 different states, and every state's got different laws. What ends up happening is you have so much confusion, because even from those states, so you have 50 different states, well, there are roughly 3,300 counties or municipalities that collect property taxes in the U.S., and every single one of them is different. So if you can imagine, all the differences between different states and how their laws are written and all these different counties, then you can start to get an idea for why tax lien and tax deed investing has never been a big popular mainstream investment. It's because it's confusing, and really, for the longest time, there wasn't anything out there that we knew of that would kind of clearly define how it worked, and that was what we set out to do. Now, because this is going to be a relatively short training period, I don't want to get everybody too confused. I find if I try to throw too much information a person's way, they end up not really absorbing any of it. The most important thing for investors to remember is that you have a choice when it comes to tax liens and deeds. They're a diverse investment. They've got they can cater to different needs. Okay, you basically have two different options. You have property acquisition. So in other words, we're talking about acquiring properties that you can turn around and sell for a lump sum, or maybe you hold it for a while. But either way, it's a buy and sell strategy or a buy and hold strategy. You also have the option to make high interest rate returns. In other words, those returns of 12 to 24%. You can do that safely, really safely. In fact, as safely as any investment you'll find. In fact, it's as close to a guaranteed thing as you can find, and I'll explain to you why. Of course, some of that depends on your ability to find the right ones, but I can tell you right now that doesn't take as much as you might think it would. It's relatively easy to pick out great tax liens, and I'll see if I can help everybody identify what makes up a great tax lien.
I also think, Shade, it's important to mention the comparison to what's available in terms of, in the genre of this type of investment at that rate of return. And I know I personally bank with Chase, and I don't know if anybody here on the line banks with Chase, but as you walk into Chase, it's wild to me to see that they're advertising right now a 13th month CD, get ready, at less than 0.5%. In fact, it's at 0.025%.
Oh yeah. In fact, you know what was, well, I mean, it's always, I think that the one thing that people are probably fairly used to, and that is making a lousy rate on anything that traditionally is considered to be a pretty safe investment. So most of your really safe investments, not very good returns. I mean, typically they don't even keep up with inflation. And if you can find one that outpaces inflation, then you've done pretty well for the safe investment. You can break through that mold with tax liens, and there's no hocus pocus, anything about it. I'll see if I can make everything make sense here.
But yeah, I just thought that was important to mention, just because of, obviously I don't believe the banks are very safe right now, personally. But knowing that my interest rate is backed by or it's collateralized by real estate, just really makes me sleep safe at night. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think for a lot of people, I think there's a big chunk of the population right now that has been working for many years, probably at least a few decades, and that have built up retirement funds, and those retirement funds have probably been hit pretty hard over the last few years, and so they know it's not performing well, and they're looking for something to do with it. That's part of the reason why people attend some of these types of things, is because they're looking for something they can do. And so along those lines, I just want you guys to remember this. Out of those two options, if you're looking at property acquisition, then tax deeds are going to be the vehicle to kind of get you where you want to go. And if you're looking at trying to earn high interest rate returns, then tax liens are going to be the vehicle for you. We try to keep things fairly simple here in the beginning. Now, how would you know which one you're looking for? Well, if you have a set amount of capital to begin with, so let's say I've got I could say, okay, I've got $10,000 set aside, and that's basically all I have to work with right now. So, what should I do as an investor? Well, the answer to that is actually pretty simple. We don't want to get tied into a long-term investment, and I'll explain to you how they work, but what we need is a short-term investment, and that's why some type of a property acquisition strategy is going to work best. However, if we're investing something more like retirement funds, and we can look at long-term investments, if the fact that it's a long-term investment doesn't hurt us, and we want to earn a good high interest rate return, then tax liens are ideal. So just remember that before we do anything that's going to get you too confused here. Sorry, let me back up here, just one here. Okay, so 3 systems: tax lien system, tax deed system, and redemption deed system. Let's just first quickly cover the tax lien system. And I'm going to kind of go through this quickly because I'd like to be able to spend more time showing you some examples of some things, because there are so many auctions taking place right now, and I can show you a ton of properties that will just blow you away. Okay, so first off, if we're talking about a tax lien system, let's talk about how property tax enforcement works in a tax lien system. Now, we already know that's going to come down to the state and how their laws are written, but within the county, it's fairly simple. If you own property before, you pay property taxes. Now, you may not actually have to pay your taxes every year, because for a lot of us, if you have a mortgage, your taxes may be included with the payment that you make. So it may be all a part of it. But if it's not, then you're at least familiar with probably seeing a property tax bill that you would get every year. The idea is simple, though. Money in, money out system. The county pays for the public education system and a whole bunch of other services. So it relies on property owners to pay property taxes as their primary source of income. So the question is, what happens if enough people don't pay their property taxes on time? Well, and really, if we were to even go beyond that, there has to be some kind of an enforcement model in place. If there wasn't a penalty for not paying our taxes, if, in other words, if we didn't have to worry about going to jail or losing a property, then nobody would pay the property taxes. So, there has to be some kind of a consequence. That's the first thing. But second, that is that there needs to be an enforcement model in place anyway, so that people can do that, and it needs to be one that's fair. I mean, after all, there are plenty of places in this world where if you are late with your property taxes, especially if we're talking about in history, that property would get taken away from you immediately, and it doesn't happen like that in America. We've got a lot better system than that. It's also important to know, let's say 10% of the population was late with their property taxes, it'd be a pretty big budget deficit for the county, and if they're short enough on a budget, they have to borrow the money. So it's an expense that ends up getting passed on to the property owners anyway. So it works out to everybody's benefit to have a good enforcement system in place. And a tax lien is one of those. What exactly is a lien, though? Liens, there are different types of liens. Okay, there are mechanics liens. A lien is a legal claim that's placed against property, and the idea is pretty simple. It takes that property and turns that property into collateral for the debt that's owed. Okay, so when that lien is placed, it does a couple things. Number one is it prevents the transfer of ownership, so you can't sell the property, and there's going to be a redemption period that's going to be associated with that lien. But after that redemption period, oftentimes you're talking about foreclosure rights or the ability to foreclose on a property. So liens can have a lot of power, depending on what type of lien we're talking about. A tax lien is simply the lien that the county places against a property due to delinquent taxes. Now, there are a few questions that I can see coming in, and I'll make sure that I answer some of these because they'll kind of, I think I'll be able to answer them as we go here. Okay, so And by the way, if the concept of a lien, I'm just thinking about other types of liens. If you've ever, well, a mechanics lien seems like it's the one I think that most people are familiar with. But
well,
even
Shade, really quick, wouldn't you consider a mortgage to be a lien on a property?
really, that is the way that it works. I mean, it's really a matter of who holds the ownership of the property in that case. But it ends up working out the same way anyway. But some other types of liens. But because really it's a similar situation even with your automobile loan. In a way, that's it's kind of like a lien against a property, but it's not quite. With a lien, well, I think a mechanics lien probably does work best. If you're having work done on a property, like a new home, and let's say you were to have a construction contractor, let's say the electrician did their work and they didn't get paid, well, they could go down to the county and they could issue a mechanics lien against your property. When they did that, what would happen is by the time everything was done with your property, you would go to close on it. And when you close is where you actually transfer ownership. Well, you wouldn't be able to do that because you'd have this lien that is in place against the property. You would have to get the construction worker paid off or settled and then have the lien removed before you could actually transfer ownership. Well, tax liens are like that, but they have even more power than what a mechanics lien has. Let's see here. There are some really good questions here.
Shade, I'd love to help you with the questions, but they're just not popping up over here on my end.
Well, I'll tell you what here. I will read off some of the questions here in just a minute. I'll get through the tax lien side of it, and then we'll get through a few of the questions. Okay, so the main points are prevents transfer of ownership. There's a redemption period attached, foreclosure. Also, one thing that's interesting about tax liens is that because they're a part of state laws set a maximum interest rate return that investors can earn. Now, that maximum interest rate return also happens to be the default interest rate return if there's no competition, or if you're in a situation like an over-the-counter situation, which we'll talk about here a little later. But that's a really good thing. That's where we get the interest rate returns of 12 to 24%. That's the maximum interest rate return. That doesn't mean that you're always guaranteed to make that maximum rate of return. It can vary from state to state, but earning that maximum rate of return is something that's pretty achievable. Now, once the county's created a lien and placed it against the property, that's really not helped the county yet. What the county is interested in, and the only thing the county is actually interested in, is just collecting the delinquent amount that's owed to them. So they're going to publish a list of all the liens that they've created, and they're going to hold a public tax sale. So investors can come and they can buy these liens. Now, a lien will be sold for the amount that's owed in delinquent taxes plus penalties and fees on any specific property. So in addition to that, the lien will be sold with a set interest rate return. Okay, so whatever it is at the time of purchase, like I said, the state will set the maximum. In some cases with live auctions, they'll bid down the interest rate. So you could bid it down. If there's a lot of competition, you could bid it down to a low percentage. If there's not a lot of competition, it's easy to make a high percentage. And if you just want to make a high percentage, we can show you how to do that without attending the auction. But the idea is pretty simple, though. As the county sells each one of those liens, it collects the money that it would have collected if the property owner had just paid their taxes on time. So immediately the county has a solution. They have the money they need to continue operating, and they've sold this lien to the investor. Now, there are a couple things that happen. There are a couple things that happen on the day that lien is purchased, okay, or on the day of the sale. Number one, the lien begins accruing interest, and number two is the redemption period begins. Okay, so when we say the lien begins accruing interest, in this case, if it's an 18% annual interest rate, then we know that it's accruing at a rate of 1.5% per month. That would give us the 18%. Now, when I say it's accruing, what I mean by that is it's accruing until the property owner pays the county off what they owe in delinquent taxes and fees. Okay, so it's going to continue to accrue until the delinquent taxes are paid off. Now, also is that redemption period, and the state laws will set the redemption period, but that is like a grace period for the property owner. So they don't have to worry about losing their property to foreclosure during that time period. For the lien holder, that's also the time period that they have to wait. That's the investment duration before they can take some kind of action. Now, there are, like I said, we want to keep it really simple. There are two possible outcomes for investors that buy tax liens, okay? So if you buy a tax lien, there are two possible things that can happen. Number one is you earn a high interest rate return. Number two is you foreclose on the property. Okay, that may sound incredibly simple, but I promise you it will make sense. Now, number one, earning a high interest rate return. This is what happens when the property owner pays what they owe to the county. Now, obviously, the later they are in paying, the more they're going to have to pay in penalties and fees. So, when they pay off the county can remove the lien from the property, and they can cut a check to the investor for their initial investment plus the interest rate that's accrued up to that point. So, for the investor that's looking for the interest rate return, having the property owner pay the county what they owe is a really good thing, because that means that you're going to get a check from the county for your initial investment plus the interest rate return that you earned. So if this was purchased for $1,000 and if it was a 6-month investment, then 6 months, half of that, 18% would be 9%. So 9% of $1,000 would be $90. So this investor would get a check in the mail after 6 months for $1,090. And that amount would change over time as the duration of the investment lasted longer. But that's what happens the majority of the time. That's what we want to have happen. In fact, if you think about it, who wants to lose their property to foreclosure? You know, and the truth is nobody does. Nobody wants to lose money to anybody, but especially when it comes to properties that have great value. Now, if we're talking about properties that have great value, what are we probably talking about? Usually single-family homes are what I'm thinking of. Nobody wants to lose a single-family home. Now, despite that, you'd be amazed at how many single-family homes we see going through sales. I think there are a lot of reasons for that. You know, we'll talk about single-family homes here in just a minute, but there are a ton of opportunities out there. With tax liens, the tax lien is only really as valuable as the property that it's been placed against. So imagine this: if you had your option between having two different liens, one lien that's placed against a single-family home and one lien that's placed against a little drainage ditch, you can imagine if you were the owner of each of those properties, which one would you have more motive to save? And obviously the single-family home, it has 100 more uses and purposes, and it's worth a ton of money, and there are 100 of these different reasons why. You'd say, well, of course I would save the single-family home. Well, it's those same reasons that make that a good investment, because if you buy a lien against that single-family home, all of those reasons that you would have to make sure that property didn't get foreclosed on, those are the same reasons that that property owner has. And the fact of the matter is, they probably have a mortgage on their property, so they're probably not the only property owner that's on that property. So okay, so I'll be able to answer some questions here now, but let me kind of cover the first thing that we usually have people ask, and I should help explain some of this. Tax liens are what are known as a first position lien. It means that they take priority or precedence over any other type of lien or claim. The only exception to that are some of the other types of government liens that might be equal to a tax lien, okay, other first position liens. And in that case, it's just a matter of which one was placed first. But that first position lien, that gives it a lot of power. So the question sometimes arises, what about a mortgage? Well, the answer to that question is that the mortgage company is really just another owner of the property. So even though there's a borrower and a lender that's involved here, you know, they're both owners in the property. Well, what that really means is that when foreclosure notices go out, and by the way, foreclosure notices are similar from state to state. Foreclosure laws are one of those things that are a little bit different from state to state, but in large part are very close to being the same from place to place. But the idea would be fairly simple. Foreclosure laws, you know, would require, you know, the foreclosure notices to go out to the owners of the property. And so that would include the mortgage company. So the mortgage company would get a foreclosure notice just like the property owner would at the end of that redemption period. Now, before that, they may not know anything about the delinquent property taxes that are owed. In fact, the chances are they probably don't know anything about it until they receive that foreclosure notice. When they receive that, though, they've got a choice. They can, you know, talk to the property owner, try, you know, the borrower, try to get something worked out with them, or they can step in and pay the property taxes themselves to avoid losing, you know, their position on that property. And that's what will happen a lot of times. You know, if it needs to be, they'll step in and protect their position and pay that off if they have to. But In some cases, I think that I think the lenders are finding themselves very deep in property. I think they've got so many foreclosed on properties right now, and I think they're looking at properties on a case-by-case basis, and they're figuring out what they want to sink money into and what's worth keeping and what's worth not keeping. And on top of that, I think they lose track of some of the inventory. As ridiculous as that sounds, they're always selling loans to other companies. And when foreclosure notices go out, that does not necessarily mean that it's going to go out to the mortgage company or the borrower that currently has that loan. So there are a lot of things that can happen that can cause a property to go to foreclosure, but the majority of the time with tax liens, that's not really your objective. If you're investing in tax liens, it most likely would be for interest rate returns. And if that's the case, then you just want to buy tax liens against the best properties you can find. Those are going to be the properties that the owners are most likely to pay off the taxes on. Okay, let's answer some questions here. Oh, do you know what I need to do? Before I go for too long here, just it's a jabberwocky here. Let me. I need to give everybody here. We mentioned earlier that we didn't really want to talk about the offer a lot, but that's not going to work if we don't give you something to at least look at. So, you can decide on your own here. So that right there is the link for the offer. You can look at that whenever you would like. That's just takes you directly to a page that will explain to you what it includes. Like I said, we can answer questions at the end about that. But we basically have offered the same package for all the students we've worked with because we feel like it's the best package to kind of help an individual. If they're going to do something, we think it offers the best variety of tools. So, okay, some questions here. Okay, now first question here is if a county goes bankrupt, will I still be paid? And the answer to that is, there are a few municipalities and counties. I think Stockton went bankrupt, but I don't know that the county did. But the main point that I want everyone to remember is this. Right now, the bankruptcy problems that a lot of our counties are facing are related to a lot of the obligations they have within retirement programs and different types of investment funds that are paying out lots of money. It's not related to a lot of other things. When it comes to the property tax enforcement system like this has to work. And on a case-by-case basis, it's basically an agreement between you and the county. So you don't have to worry about a county going bankrupt and then somehow ripping you off on the deal. I've never heard of it happening ever. In fact, I don't know that it's even possible. But more importantly, I think you need to remember that this system has to work in order for the county to be able to operate and survive. They have to have a way of collecting the money now because they can't wait for 3 or 6 or 9 months before they do that. They have too many bills coming out. So if they weren't paying out investors, even just in a few cases, it wouldn't work. Period. People would lose any confidence in the investment, and that's actually part of what provides so much security to the investment is that number one, it's backed by real estate. So you're talking about if it's a $100,000 single-family home and it's a $1,000 tax lien, that doesn't change the fact that that $1,000 tax lien is still utilizing that entire home as collateral. Okay, not a portion of it, not a percentage of it. The entire home is collateral, so it's powerful. It's backed by real estate. But number two is it's something that is regulated and controlled by state laws. So the county's just doing according to what state laws, what they can do. I don't think they're going to break the laws. The counties are typically they should be keeping them anyway. Okay, other questions here. There's one question that says, which on something is the best state to invest in now? But I'm not sure what that is. Best on what? So anyways, if you can just rewrite that again here and tell me. And things like HOA liens. By the way, if a student mentioned HOA liens, And HOA, there actually there are a number of lawsuits. There's actually I think there's a movement taking place right now in the country with investors that are challenging different HOAs. And for anybody that doesn't know, an HOA is a homeowners association. If anybody has any questions about that, it's probably kind of a detailed answer that we can get into later and more specifically. But I just want everybody to know that we get into very specifics with the students that we work with and helping them first identify a lot of things like this, but then also helping them figure out what the best things are to invest in.
Hey, Shade, really quick, I've got a couple questions coming in over here on my end, and I just wanted to let Jerome and Cindy know. Jerome asked, how do you perform the due diligence on a property for tax lien investing? I think that's a fantastic question. And then Cindy asked, will we get a copy of this recording for later review? I'll answer Cindy's question first. If you guys want a recording, again, we put the email address up there. I can type it up there again for you. Shoot us an email. Let us know if you'd like the recording. We can get that out to you. And I know that Shade's about ready to get into a live demonstration of our website and a little bit of a live research process for you, Jerome. So he'll get into some detail and some live explanation of how that works.
Yes, and in fact, I went in and I uploaded a couple of documents that the participants should have the ability to download. I'm just trying to think here if I remember how exactly they can do that. Well, I'm sure that there are people online that are whizzes and they can figure it out. But I uploaded a couple documents. One is called the hot list, which you guys are going to love. That's a list of properties that we kind of pulled out of a really big tax list. Properties that look promising to us, single-family homes and things for auctions that are coming up. I think one auction is on the 7th and one auction is on the 12th of May. Anyways, a little hot list, and then I offered up another document that helps people read legal descriptions, which I'll explain that in just a minute. Like Skylar said, I want to get on to the live demonstration side, so let me just finish up by talking about the tax foreclosures or tax deeds. There are some states in the country, about a third of the U.S. About a third of the states in the U.S. utilizes what we call a tax deed system. It's also what you would call a tax foreclosure system. The idea, though, is really simple. The county will wait out a redemption period that the state sets. Now, that could be 3 years, it could be 4 years, whatever that time period is. They're not going to issue liens against the property. They're just going to wait. And at the end of that time period, the county will initiate the foreclosure process on that property. So the same situation comes up where the property owner can either pay or they don't pay. If they don't pay, then the property will be foreclosed on by the county. And when the county forecloses on it, they're going to create a new deed to the property, and they'll create a tax deed because it's created, due to delinquent taxes, and that's also the easiest deed for them to create. So if you're looking at a tax deed, or if you're going to a tax deed sale, we're talking about properties that have been foreclosed on by the county due to delinquent taxes. That means if you go to buy it, you're buying that property outright. So the highest bidder wins the property. The opening bid amount is usually what's owed total amount in delinquent taxes, penalties, and fees. So, if you're talking about 2, 3, 4 years worth of delinquent taxes, then you can kind of get an idea. But what I think tax deeds offer in terms of significance is, well, I can tell you that as we go through lists, we look for tax deeds that have an opening bid amount that's approximately 10% of the property's assessed value. Okay, so if the property has an assessed value of $70,000, we like to see an opening bid of around $7,000 or somewhere in that range. That's usually what kind of catches our eye. And what I will say is this: I think that tax deeds are one of the few real estate strategies in the market where you can consistently find properties for as little as 10% of their assessed value. And I think it's been like that. I think you could have done that 10 years ago, and I think you'll be able to do it 10 years from now. At least I hope. We'll have to see what happens with the internet and everything that's changed. But that's really what tax deeds offer, is the ability to acquire property for as a wholesaler. Really, you're operating as a wholesaler. So you're buying this stuff at dirt low prices, and you have your options wide open at that point as far as what you do with the property. You can blow it out very quickly to another investor. You can sit on it for a while, long-term strategies. We get into all those specifics as we work with investors. And I don't really want to get too detailed unless people have some major questions here about the redemption deed system, because I don't want it to muddy up too much. There's sort of a hybrid between two systems. There are a handful of states that utilize it. Texas is a real popular state, though, that does, and there are some advantages there. So, okay, all right, let me just skip past that. Oh, again, just by the way, guys, just remember that this is the main important option to remember, is that you have that option to choose between property acquisition with tax deeds or high interest rate returns with your tax liens. Don't let the rest of it get you too confused. If you can understand what tax deeds are and tax liens are, which at this point you should have a pretty good understanding of what the two are. Lien states issue lien against the property. We know how that works. They sell that off to investors, and then the investors have to sit and wait on it. Wait for the property owner to either pay it off or not pay it off and get foreclosed on. Now, what we're going to do here, right before we skip over into the live demonstration, Skylar, this is somebody you worked with.
Yes, actually, this is one of our, I call her my rock star students. This is Elise. She's from, if I remember correctly, Fort Myers, Florida. And this is one of my students who, let me just say this. Sometimes, I guess, a difficult part or a challenge that some novice investors or even an intermediate to an advanced investor can run into is they get stuck on one county. They say, Skylar, I'm just not finding good deals. I can't find any good single-family homes, whatever it might be. The great thing is, like Shade mentioned earlier, is that there's over 3,300 different counties in this country to choose from. And with that said, there's always going to be an auction somewhere, sometime in this country. And so one thing that Shade's going to get into here with you in a second is he's going to do a demonstration of Property Tax List, which is our website. And we have a section on that site called the auction calendar. On that auction calendar, you're going to know, out of all the states in the country, out of all the counties in the country, which counties are having auctions and when. And not only when those counties are having auctions, but you'll also have the ability to get that pre-auction list. Now, that previous deal, she was able to pick that property up in Birmingham, Alabama, of all places. It was an online auction through, I believe it was Bid for Assets. But long story short, she put in an opening bid for that property at $1,700 and some change. Great thing is she calls me 2 days later after the auction ends, and she said, Skylar, you'll never believe it, I won. And I've never heard a 70-year-old lady so excited in her entire life in terms of being able to pick up a property. But I just want to let you guys know with this example here, they're a little bit out of the ordinary. I think more along the lines of what Shade mentioned earlier. If we can stay within that 10 to 15% threshold of the tax assessed value. But again, property like this, one business model I like to teach my students is let's get you in and out of these deals quickly. And so a deal like this, she's not going to have a problem selling quickly. So.
Awesome. Awesome. This is another one. These are both success stories that we've just had come in here in just recent months. This is another student that picked up a property, and what's interesting about both of these deals are that the students were both attending online auctions, and they both picked them up for the opening bid amount. So it's pretty impressive stuff here, really. If you consider that they're picking it up for the opening bid amount, what that means is that there was nobody there to compete with them or to put in a higher bid than what they offered initially, what the amount that they were able to see on the screen. So if that gives you any idea, there's competition out there, but like Scott said, there's so many opportunities that you can always work in another area, and there's still a lot of places that don't have a lot of too much traffic within their auctions. So I'm going to switch over here. We're going to just.
While you're doing this, Shade, I think along the lines of what you were saying there, in the ability of investors to be able to pick properties up for what's owed in delinquent taxes or that opening bid, at the same time, just as many properties, such as the ones you just saw right there, go unsold, or no one bid on these properties, meaning that they go back into what's called county inventory or OTC inventory, also known as over-the-counter. And so that's another great way to pick up properties and tax liens for that set interest rate without having to bid against the competition.
As I get thinking about it here, I think I think the next slide I've got set up here is actually is a question we get all the time, and that is, I know that people oftentimes I'm sure they've heard that they have the ability, or at least if they don't know, they can know now. You don't have to attend an auction in order to buy in order to buy tax liens or tax deeds. That's something that's optional. So if you're not really the type that enjoys auctions, there are actually some major benefits to purchasing outside of the auction in what we call over-the-counter, which is what Skylar mentioned. And over-the-counter is really simple. It's just tax liens or tax deeds that were offered at an auction but didn't sell. Counties can either sit on them or they can sell them directly to the public. And if they sell them directly to the public, there are some great advantages. Like, for instance, if it's a tax lien, you automatically earn the maximum interest rate return in that state. So picking out tax lien investments over the counter is a great way to invest. We find lots and lots of opportunity. Okay, what I'm doing here, I'm going to make this kind of extra big so that you can see what I'm doing. Let me just get logged in here first. And what we wanted to show you is there are so many auctions that are taking place here. It's a really popular time of the year for counties to hold sales. And so let me just show you here. Okay, this is what the auction calendar looks like here. That's a little bit too big here. Okay, this is what the auction calendar looks like. So what you can see is we've got a lot of different days that are listed here, and you can see different counties listed on the dates. And those are all dates that auctions are taking place. If you wanted to download the actual list, then you could do so just by clicking on any of these links. You can actually download the hard copy list. Now we're interested in a number of different things. There are actually more than one way you can obtain lists here too. We mentioned a second ago the over-the-counter list. That's actually this section right here. We've got that broken down into states, which there are thousands of over-the-counter lists. We've got one of the biggest over-the-counter collections available. But what I'm interested in right now is the Internet auctions page. And the reason for that is because Internet auctions are something that didn't really exist much more than 5 years ago, and today they're just becoming very popular, and they're an easy way to invest. So we absolutely love them. We have these separated according to state, and there are, like I said, tons and tons of auctions. I think Florida has upwards of 85 or 90 tax lien online auctions going on. They also have tax deed auctions, online auctions taking place. Now, you may be wondering how Florida is able to do that. Florida is kind of a weird state. They offer both tax liens and tax deeds. They're actually the only state in the country that does it the way they do it. But the way that it works is simple enough. They sell liens on a property, and the lien has a 2-year redemption period. Normally, at the end of that redemption period, if you bought a lien, you would take the lien and start the foreclosure process if the property owner hadn't paid it off. In Florida, though, what happens is the county will initiate the foreclosure process after that 2 years expired, and they'll hold a sale. And at that tax sale, they're going to sell that property off after they foreclose on it as a tax deed. They'll then use the proceeds to pay off the lien holders. So in Florida, you don't really foreclose on tax liens. The county really more or less does that for you in most cases. But either way, Florida offers a ton of opportunity because you can get the property in Florida if you want, or you can earn a high interest rate return, which in Florida, the maximum is 18%, so it's really good.
And they also have that bonus 5% penalty, payoff penalty. Is that right?
Oh, I forget about that all the time. But yeah, Florida is actually, when kind of an interesting note. When I started off about 10 years ago, Florida used to attract a lot of really big financial institutions. I remember there was a year where one financial institution spent upwards of like $300 million in one of the bigger counties in Florida in 1 year at a tax sale. $300 million, it was such just a crazy amount. But the reason why they would invest in Florida is because Florida has this early payoff penalty. And what that means is if a lien were to pay off in the first year, so let's say that you bought a lien and it paid off within the first month. Well, normally, if you weren't making, let's say you were making even a full 18%, after 1 month you've only made 1.5%. That's not worth your time or your money. Well, what Florida did was they implemented this early payoff penalty, and what it does is any lien that redeems within that first year automatically gets an additional 5% penalty rate, added on top of it. So rather than making 1.5%, you now make 6.5%, which is an excellent return for a 1-month investment. So, that's how Florida operates, and they've always been really popular, and they've always really catered to investors. Now, I'm sorry, I didn't want to get too off track here. What I did here. I clicked here on Florida with their online tax deed auctions, and I clicked on Lee County, Florida. Okay, so I know they're going to have online tax deed auctions. The page that it took me to looked like this. Okay, so this page right here, you can see this is an online auction page that is set up by a company called realauction.com. They're setting up a lot of auctions for Florida and for some other states. There are a few other companies that they're setting up online auctions as well. But what I wanted to do here was to show you just a few of the properties that are out there. Here's for an auction on May 7th. Okay. So again, what I'm looking at right here, which by the way, this is I clicked on the auction calendar. This has a calendar here that shows me the different dates that they have a sale scheduled for their tax deeds and how many tax deeds they're planning on selling. So I know that for May 7th, they've got 19 out of 25 tax deeds still available. And this is Tuesday. Today's Thursday, so it's coming up pretty quick. These properties could very well all end up going into auction and not, redeeming or getting pulled from the list. So let's take a look here. This is a fairly standard, tax sale list. Looking at it, well, at least it's fairly standard for online auctions. But that's part of the reason why I like online auctions is because online auction lists tend to provide you with more information about the property. You can also click on links that will take you directly to county property records and things like that. It makes it much easier. Okay, so what I want to click on here, let's look at a few of these. Okay, there's an excellent example. Okay, this property right here is the one I just clicked on. Just want to zoom in so everybody can see what this looks like here. Does that look pretty big, Skylar, on your screen? Can you see that pretty well?
Perfect, Shade.
Okay, all right. It's this one right here that we're interested in, okay? So if you can see here, the opening bid amount is $5,000, okay? And I clicked on that link right there, and what that did was it pulled up the property record that the county has. Now, let me see if I can show you some of the information here. Now, first off, one of the reasons why I chose this county was because they got pictures, and it makes it easier when you're explaining things to somebody. So let's take a look here. $5,000 opening bid. What are we looking at? That's a pretty nice little single-family home. I mean, it's not a nice home, but as far as single-family homes, it doesn't look like there's anything terribly wrong with it. I mean, that's certainly to me as an investment, I wouldn't see any initial problems with that. Okay. So let's see what else we can find out here about the property. Oops. Now we can also see here this is an overhead image that we can get from the property, which, by the way, it's kind of interesting. I was doing a training just actually last night with the investors that we work with, our group base, but what we were focusing on. Hold on here. Let me just bump that. What we were focusing on here was how to go through these the county records. And essentially, what you could do to perform your own title search. And really, when you become very familiar with county property records, you become familiar with the same source that a lot of places use to look up records and information on property. So it really becomes a great skill to have, the ability to research information on properties. What we're looking at right here, I think, is this property right here. So, we can kind of see what this property looks like from that perspective. Now, what else can we do with this property if we wanted to see? There are a few things we can do. We've got the address for the property right here. So, and these are all things we can do initially right off the bat, just to get a feel for what the property is. What we're trying to establish initially is, first off, if the property is still available here today in the auctions, the auctions on Tuesday, then there's a good chance this property could end up going to the auction. So, what we need to determine is if $5,000 is the opening bid amount, what do we believe the property is worth? And to really answer that question, I guess there are more than one answer because that depends on who we'd be selling it to. It's worth something different to an investor that's going to take it through that investment process than it would to you'd sell it to them for less than you would to somebody that would a long-term buyer, somebody that would go out and get a loan on a property like this. And I can explain to you how that would happen. But what we're trying to determine, though, for the most part in the beginning is what we think that we could turn around and sell the property for, or what our maximum bid price should be. So, using something like that physical address, because we're somewhat short on time here, I can show you. We have, there are some information sources that are right there online anybody can use. And Zillow is actually one of those ones that there are a lot of different ways that you can exploit all the different resources that Zillow has to offer. But you can always use it as a rough estimate on how to value a home. Now, some of you may be saying, well, it's not very exact. And the truth is it may not be exact, although we find that it's certainly closer more often than not. But there we go. Oh, I guess I didn't find it anyway here. Anyhow, we want to determine what the maximum bid price should be, and using something like Zillow here, we can determine that. Now, that's kind of weird. I wonder why I didn't pull that up here. Well, I'll tell you what. There are so many examples here that we're not going to waste any time with it. We'll just move on here to the next one if it doesn't pull that up here immediately. So we're going to back off of that. Let me just zoom out just a little bit so it's not quite so humongous here. And we're going to go down here and we'll look at another auction. Okay, so let's look at some more here. Now, again, what we're looking for when we go through this list is we're looking for properties. You can see the opening bid amount, right? Oh, let me get bigger. All right, hold on here. Okay, there we go. You can see the opening bid amount listed right here on these, and you can see the assessed value on the bottom. What we're looking for right here is the biggest spread possible. So this is a tax deed list again. So we're talking about these are properties that are going to be sold to the highest bidder, and you're buying this property outright. It's been foreclosed on by the time you buy it, so liens, encumbrances, things attached to the property are extinguished. You're the property owner. You can turn around and sell it. You can rent it out. You can do whatever you'd like with it. So as we can kind of scroll down here, and we can see some of what's available. Now, there are some properties that will always catch my attention, and they're the properties. A lot of times they'll have a fairly low assessed value, but they've got a really low price to get into it as well. Just want to see if I see any. Okay, so here's an example of one. Let's see if it's any good. $4,731 opening bid and a $24,000 assessed value. Just raw land. Not that one. Hold on here. Let's take a look at another one. Let's go with. Actually, let me just jump over here. It is blown up so humongously big for me right now. Okay. All right. Now, what we're looking for here, let me just see if anything kind of catch my eye. Okay, here's one that looks fantastic. Now, if we're talking about that 10% ratio, here's one that would fit that. There's $7,600 opening bid on this property right here, and it looks like it has an assessed value of about $60,000. So let's take a look and see what that property right there is. Okay, and what we can see here is we've got a single-family home. Let me pull this down here a little bit. Okay, so I want to make sure everybody can kind of see that here. Single-family home. Sorry, I have to. Let's see. Let me erase a couple of these here.
Not gonna lie, Shade, you're a little everywhere.
Hold on a second here. Hold on, let me grab this rest again here. Okay, just a second here. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to go back to Zillow because we are kind of jumping around here. Let me just paste that in here. And what I want to do is I want to pull up a value on roughly what that property is worth, because we know what the opening bid amount is. Okay, there it is right there. Okay, so I'm just going to show everybody right here what this property, sorry, I've got to move this down just a little bit. Okay, so $7,000 opening bid, $7,600 to be specific. $60,000 assessed value. When we pull it up on Zillow, Zillow estimates the value to be worth about $98,000. Now, Zillow, like I said, it provides a lot of tools that are kind of neat that we can see off a glance. We can also get this information through the county property records, so we can see immediately. We're talking about a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,400 square foot property. It was built in '73. And if we look down, the historical valuation is always important to me because I think the market's going to make a comeback. So let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. You can kind of see if you've never used the historical valuation section. The bottom line right here represents the value of this property. The one right above that is for that zip code. And the one above that is for Bonita Springs, the city. You know, these are average prices. But you can see that this one peaked out between about 2005 and 2006. Looks like July 2006. This property was estimated to be worth $294,000. So this property was almost worth $300,000, you know, at that time, and it has an opening bid right now of $7,600. Now, I don't know exactly what you will buy the property for, but I did want to show you one more thing that I thought was kind of cool. Because you know, we may not know. Hey, you know, we can say, you know, may not know exactly what that property is going to sell for. But one thing we can do is using an auction calendar like this. We could go back and we could check out the auction that ran last week, and you can see what some of the different properties are going for. Now, the reason I say that is because we went through this auction here, and we went through this auction last week. And we did a lot of research and stuff with it, and yeah, we found that a lot of the properties sold to either the opening bid amount, or you'll see here, you notice a lot of these that say sold to third-party bidder. What that means in almost every single case like that was that the property was essentially sold to the lien holder because there were no other bidders that were interested enough in the property. So, you know, that basically also means that for the properties that had an opening bid amount, it didn't go too much above that, and that most of the properties that didn't even get a bid to begin with, and they ended up going back to the lien holder. So that's one thing that we can see. We already know that the competition level, in fact, we could go through, they had a lot of properties that they offered here. We could go through each one of these cases and take a look at some of these properties here and see. You know, these ones are mostly, find a single family home here, but I don't want to take up actually too much time because it is going to look all sporadic here. I actually want to be able to jump back over and be able to show people a few different things here. Okay, so I skipped over there. Now there are a few things that I want to cover, or just make sure that I essentially tell everybody. The due diligence process, because I know there's a lot of interest in what the due diligence process is. And how it works. Now, the due diligence process is a simple phrase that we use to describe a fairly, I guess, a number of different things that you can do. But it's the idea of doing research on a property so that you can make good investment decisions. It's about being able to determine what the property is worth so that you don't overpay for a property, or so that you don't undersell. You know, so you don't sell it for less than what it's worth. So, you know, I think that the due diligence process consists of a number of different things. It's actually really a system. It's more than we can teach. It's more than what we can teach within an hour. But the idea is relatively simple. We walk our students kind of through that process. We help them determine exactly what their strategy is. You know, meaning what are their resources to begin with, and what are they trying to achieve. And once we know that, then they can figure out. You know, we can help them figure out what their strategy is, and then we can help them on a case-by-case basis with specific investments. You know, in fact, ideally, with each one of our people, if we can sit down with them and look at the same property together, then we can say, well, this is what we see, or you know, these are some additional steps you can take to make sure that there are no potential issues with this property. And we already went through the live demonstration here. So now, okay. There are a couple of questions here. One of the questions is, you know, can you explain how or where one can see if other liens exist on a property? Now, the answer to that question actually depends. Well, let me see if I can back up a little bit. if you were looking at property records, and if you wanted to be able to go through those property records and find different types of liens that could potentially be on a property, in other words, essentially the same thing that like a title search company would do for you, one of the problems you run into is there is a lot of information that we can obtain directly from the county. In fact, when I pull up the county information, if you remember, the page that I was pulling up with Lee County that would have the picture of the house and then the map picture and then all that information, well, included in that information, we have tons of stuff. We have all the sales history. We've got the historical valuation of the property. We've got historical owners. We've got lots and lots of really good information, but it may not be all the information that the county has. Most counties have records that are not so much attached to, well, I guess all counties have records that are not part of just kind of their standard offerings, and those are part of what they sometimes call their official records. These are records that can be accessed, but it usually requires a username and password to kind of log into their system to get their official records, and that's where the title search companies come into play. But the only reason why that would ever become an issue, or the only reason why you would ever need to worry about another lien being against the property, would be with a tax deed. In other words, if you're going to buy a property, pay for it outright, and we advise our students anyway to do a title search, at least in the beginning, especially have another company do a title search for you so that you can verify any of that. But the tax foreclosure, the foreclosure itself will wipe out encumbrances attached to the property. So the only thing that would have the possibility to survive would be like an IRS lien, or like a state government lien, and that's what you would get revealed through a title search. And at some point, in some places, if you invest in the same county over and over again, you can become very familiar with how the county operates. So just remember that when you become familiar with a place, you can learn all the ins and outs. You can eventually probably even get access to the same systems, look up all the information and records. But for now, it's not really a concern. The idea would be to kind of do all your research, pick out one property, and that you're dead set on, and then do the title search on that one. Okay, let's see here.
Well, also, Shade, really quick, I think it's important to mention here that, again, I keep going back to that $3,300 or 3,300 different jurisdictions, counties, townships. I'm originally from Alaska, small little town outside of Anchorage, Wasilla. Some of us might know where that's at. But at the same time, they call them boroughs up there, actually. And so the biggest thing is, again, I cannot stress this enough. And the only reason I bring this up is because when you guys have questions, when you get enrolled, you have access to a hotline via the phone, via email. Do not get hung up on just one county. There's a couple different systems I like to teach my students in terms of, how to find the effective counties, what to look for, what not to look for. But the key, and this is the key, and this is something that we teach our students, is, how do we find the information we need from a county tax sale list quickly? And that's the key, is how do we find that information quickly so that we can find the information we need to make the decision to get the deal done. Because, again, guys, we're not buying Ferraris here, okay? I think, Shade, if you get a second, I'd love for you to go over that Ferrari example you used. I think that's awesome.
It actually works out just fine because we've got the question, and that is the question is related to what happens if there's people living there, or sometimes the question will be how do I get keys to the place, or what if there's this problem or that problem, and the answer that we have for people is this: if you're talking about property acquisition, then there are a number of things that we can teach you to do that will allow you to get a better estimate of what the condition of the property is, what the current condition of the property is. So we don't expect anybody to make any big decisions, sight unseen, not knowing anything about the property. But it's also important to remember that that you are able to step in with this position and act as a wholesaler. And so it kind of changes. It changes your position as a buyer from something you've probably never really been before with property, and what that means is some of these things are just part of the dealing with as a wholesaler. In other words, if the analogy he's talking about is if somebody offered to sell me a Ferrari for $3,000, I wouldn't care if it had a ding in the door. I wouldn't care if all the tires were flat. I wouldn't care if it was just barely working. I mean, $3,000 for a Ferrari would just be such a bargain. And it's kind of the same concept with these properties. The idea is, hey, if you can get a good enough bargain on it, then a lot of these issues are things that aren't really that big of a deal. But they're all also very easy to resolve. This isn't one of those real estate strategies that that's very vulture-like. In other words, you're not out there kicking people out of their properties, because if there's one thing that takes forever, it is to lose your property because of taxes. And so most of the time these properties are not still occupied. It doesn't happen very often, to where it would still be. If it did, then it's a simple case of the county evicting somebody. So, all right, another question that somebody actually asked that I wanted to bring up, that it was a really good point, and that is, the offer, when you guys click on the offer, which I put up there, there are some students I know that have already kind of asked me and said, look, I can't really do, $500 right now. And what I wanted to let everybody here know is that, like we said earlier, we're in this for the teaching, and that's what's important to us, and that's what we enjoy doing. We wouldn't want somebody to not do the training because the $500 was more than they could it was more than they could choose. So what I'd like you to do is I've been working on something that could very well help out here. If you are in a situation where you can't do it because of that, then please do me a favor and send me an email and just say, hey, I'm interested in in whatever you might have to offer in scholarship programs or and other options, and let me see what I can offer to you, because we don't want that to be the reason that you don't do this. So if we can find a way to reduce the cost for it, we're gonna see what we can do. Or if we've got scholarship opportunities, we'll do whatever we can. We don't want it to be something that stops you. Okay, here's another good question here. Let's see here. Do counties usually charge a fee to enter an auction? And if so, can the fee be refunded if you don't purchase a deed or lien at the auction? That's actually a really good question. The county has, if you want to participate in an online auction, then one of the requirements is going to be that the county is going to have the county is going to require some type of a deposit. Usually it's going to be a certain percentage of what you plan to spend, or they'll have it cap out at a certain amount. But the fact is, if you don't spend that, you get all that money back. And so you don't have to worry about that. The only way it's going to cost you money is if you actually buy something. And so I think the county should do that to make sure that the people that are there are going to pay for the properties that they bid on. Because if somebody bids on a property and wins it, and then they don't pay, then that's just lost revenue for the county. So they want to avoid that as much as they can. Okay, now.
Hey guys, Shad, I got a good question here from Sandra. She says, how would an owner deciding to do a short sale before the auction or redemption period ends impact the tax deeds and/or the liens? I'm going to take a stab at this one personally, and I think hit home on the sense of, before any transfer of ownership, I think you had a slide up earlier that said before the deed can be transferred from one person or one owner to the other owner, because of the tax lien being in the first position, that tax lien has to be satisfied prior to any sale of the property. Is that correct?
Yeah. In fact, that's a really good point. One of the questions that we sometimes get now, at least the last few times, has been about sort of a pre-foreclosure strategy that's usually more associated with tax deeds. And what it is they're saying, hey, well, couldn't I approach property owners before the sale and try to work out some kind of a deal? And the answer to that is yes. You could do that. I mean, there are some states that have in their laws that they don't, the property owners can't be contacted. But for the most part, that's not. It's not a legal issue. The main issue that you run into is this: if the individual that is about to, the individual that owes the taxes, if they own that property outright, and if there are no other liens or encumbrances against the property, then you have the ability to work some things out. You might be able to work out something with them where you can pay off their taxes and put a little bit of money in their pocket and walk away with the property. Now, I don't know if that's going to save you money over what you can do with the auction. That's something else to consider as well, is that at the auction, one of the reasons why tax deeds are so effective and why they work is because the county doesn't really have their own personal interest involved with the auction. In other words, they don't really care what the property sells for, because the opening bid amount is going to cover the property taxes and penalties and fees that the county's owed. So as long as it brings in that amount, the county doesn't care. With normal foreclosures, the bank cares quite a bit about what properties sell for, because any money they don't sell it for is money that they lose. So with counties, in tax sales, you've got that benefit there that the county doesn't have their own personal interest involved, and they'll let properties sell for a really low price. Let's see here. Sky, what was the other part of your question here?
Oh man, I've got some questions here creeping in as well. Oh, you know what? Here's one as well. I don't know if you mentioned this or not. I couldn't remember. When you were going over the propertytaxlist.com website, one of the key benefits of also joining the team and getting involved with us is the idea that, again, not only are we going to teach you how to go out there, find the deals, get the deals done, walk you through the auction process, but when you do tentatively find some good deals, we've got a section within Property Tax List called the Property Evaluation Portal. Did you get a chance to go over that at all?
I just told them kind of briefly about how we wanted to look over the properties with the students, kind of give them suggestions on what we can see and what types of due diligence they can do. But how Tyler explains it sounds a lot better, and you'll be able to see it actually looks better the way he describes it. And it is a portal, where you can enter in information. We've got a great system like that set up. But what I realized was that we actually forgot to mention the property hunt workshop. Of
course we did.
Yeah, for anybody that signs up tonight, they're going to get a chance to enroll in the property hunt workshop. We have it's scheduled right now for the 11th, which is a Saturday. I think it's actually a week from Saturday. So we've got that scheduled for Saturday the 11th. And anybody that registers and signs up for this today will also get an invitation to attend that workshop. And that's going to be pretty neat because it's going to be relatively small, and we're going to have a chance to really just spend a lot of time looking through properties. And what we'd like is for everybody to walk away from that with at least a few different properties that are sort of theirs, that they can use as a starting point. So, we're really looking forward to that. Again, the main points here that we want to get across are to click on the link for the offer, but again, also be sure to remember that email address and to send that to me if you need to find out about maybe like our scholarships or something like that. Be sure to let me know.
Hey, Shade, here's another good quick question from Marco.
Sure.
He says, how often are the county property tax list, man, that's a mouthful, county property tax list updated on your site, and by whom?
Oh, excellent. Well, I guess all of us do the updating on the system. We don't get the lists from anybody else. It's actually something that we started doing on our own about the same time we created the training, and that was because one of the most time-consuming aspects of the investment really is trying to determine when sales are taking place and to locate the lists. And so we decided a long time ago that if we could just kind of provide that stuff for our students, and if we could help them determine what their strategy was, that we would have all of these hurdles out of the way, and that they would be that much closer to getting started, as investors, and that's really how it's worked out. We have investors all the time that are buying up lots of liens and deeds, and they're able to have a lot of success with it. So, I think the way that we've got it set up here, I think will really benefit everybody that's involved.
Yeah, so you'll always know at least a month in advance, to kind of plan out your.
Oh yeah. By the way, as far as how often it's updated every single month. I mean, in fact, I would say probably more like every couple weeks. We're almost in a constant state of updating it because not only do we have to catch all of the upcoming auctions, which those are only available 6 to 8 weeks beforehand. So you don't really have a lot of time on those. But then we also have all the over-the-counter lists, that we're constantly obtaining and trying to update. And so, we have a lot of us that update the list, but it is something that we're dedicated to because we know how important it is, and it saves our students so much time. Instead of like looking, trying to figure out where they're going to begin, they can just look at a calendar, or they can look, through a list of different places and kind of identify which states they know already will work for them.
I agree, Shade. I think one of the hardest parts about getting I guess the word I'm looking for is consistent at the game of county tax sales is actually, finding those lists. Because, again, like you mentioned before, prior to the Internet, it was old school. You had to go down to the county courthouse. You had to go down to either the treasurer or the appraiser. You had to go down and find a zoning map, take a parcel ID. I mean, the fact, and this is what I was thinking when I saw you doing your research on Lee County, was the idea that you had it all in one central location. I mean, that's a very, very rare thing that I've come across in my own research, because sometimes there's additional steps that need to be taken on what's called a parcel ID search tool, et cetera. But at the same time, the fact that you can do it all online now, and the idea that when we work with our students at this level, we really want you to treat it like a business so that it rewards you like a business, but more importantly, value your time. You guys, if you're spending 40, 50 hours a week researching lists, you're going to pull your hair out and you're going to quit. It's the name of the game.
Well,
And,
actually just reminded me of another thought that I had, and it kind of comes back to what I think most of the people here are going to have in common, and that is, I'll bet that most of the people here have spent money on training before, and if you haven't spent money on training before, like I said, then you're lucky, because I think that a lot of people have. We, like I said earlier, we're not really sales guys. It's not really what we do. We teach this primarily. That's what we do every single day, and we enjoy it. We love finding deals. We love talking to people about it and teaching about it, and so if you've ever wanted to learn the strategy, then hands down, well, actually, I can tell you this much. We offer a guarantee on everything we do, all the programs that we sell, even at the $4.99. If a person's not completely satisfied after the training, feel like they had just absolute value for what they purchased, then we'll give them a full refund. The fact is, I can't remember the last time that we gave a refund. And the reason why we don't is because, first off, we want to provide quality to begin with, but we're going to keep working with you until you're successful. And we want to provide you with the tools you need to be successful. So, we guarantee the quality of what we're going to provide, but we also are here to tell you that if you're serious about tax lien deed investing, we know the industry pretty well, and that we know for a fact this is the best opportunity out there in terms of training value. You won't find anything quite like this. And like they can go over the list of, when they click on the link, though, they can go over kind of a review, but the documents that you're going to download alone are huge. But then from there, you've got the weekly webinars that are live every single week we do. You've got 100 plus hours of training videos you can watch, plus all the lists. It's just almost more than you can take in. I don't want to dive too much into it, but take a second to look over it, and you'll kind of get a feel for what it is. Like I said, if nothing else, it's guaranteed. So
give us a call, guys. If you have questions, don't hesitate to give us a call. In fact, Shade, the phones are ringing off the hook, so I'm actually going to say farewell to everybody here tonight. It's been a pleasure being with you. But again, guys, if you have any questions for us, please give us a call. I'll be more than happy to talk to you. Shade, you're fantastic. Thanks, brother.
No problem at all. Here, I'm just going to give them this one last link here. They've got their phone number for us. If we don't answer, likely it sounds like we're going to be tied up on some lines here, so be sure to leave this a voicemail and we'll follow up with you. Or you can send us an email. I left that link there at the very end. So, again, thanks, everybody, for joining us. Hopefully, you'll be able to come and join us for our next weekly live training, and you'll be able to call us on the hotline and we can get to know you. So thanks so much. We appreciate the time you spent to join us, and even if you decide to do nothing at all, we hope you'll join us again the next time we put on a training, and we'd love to see what else we can do with that. So thanks so much, everybody, and have a great night. We'll hope to see you again sometime here next week at a live training.